Yeah, hi, Rob Aubrey here. So here's an excerpt from uh, my CE class called the Myth Busting the VA Home Loan is the name of the course. But this is on appraisal. So this is myth 3, and there's 4 actual uh, parts of the appraisal myths. So number 1 is they take longer, right? VA or they're yeah, they take longer, right? So VA, so the stats nationwide are VA appraisals are 7.2, conventionals 10.5. It may vary depending on market condition, but by no means do they take longer. So let's get that one out of the way. So number 2, they come in too low. They are the same appraisers that are doing conventional VA loans. Now, there are only certain ones that do VA loans, but that's not all they do. Now, in some markets, that it may be true that's all they do. However, there are no statistics that say they come in lower than any other loan program. Granted, during the runaway sellers market, which I call the ridiculous period, most appraisals came in low. So people tend to remember the VA more than others. So and that's the belief. That's why and I study with groups, multiple VA lender groups, and the belief is that that's what we believe is why people do that, is because they do so few VA loans that if they had a bad experience on one, they tend to remember it more than because they do so many other conventionals FHA types that they tend not to remember the bad ones as much as they remember the one bad VA, right? So, um, so here's the thing though, but here, no other loan program has these options, right? So if they do come in low, there's a thing called Tidewater, right? So Tidewater is where the appraiser believes they're not going to hit the value. And so they invoke Tidewater. So they notify the lender notifies everybody else. So then you have 48 hours, all hands on deck to help the appraiser, right, to come in and help you with the value. So the VA program has a built-in system mechanism to say, look, help us help you. And so, but here's the thing, if Tidewater doesn't work, that's okay. There's the next step is called ROV, reconsideration of value. So let's talk about that. So Tidewater is your process, and reconsideration of value is a formal process of appealing the NOV, notice of value. There's no guarantee the veteran will get the higher value, but let me tell you a quick story. So I was teaching this class, and there was an agent in there that literally right before the class just got word that their $760,000 VA transaction got an appraisal at 680. Not because it was the appraiser was just lazy. It was in Tooele, which is a challenge because you get in some of these more rural communities. He just stuck with a couple uh, uh, lesser comparable sales that were nearby and made wild adjustments and came in low. And rather than in the rural communities, you have to go out further and find actual comparable sales. And in rural, it's okay to go miles away because that's the way it is. Not like in a city, if you go miles away, you're in a totally different socioeconomic situation where that's not the case in rural communities. So anyway, the Tidewater failed. So then I explained the formal process of appealing. The veteran has to appeal. It can't be anybody else. The veteran has to appeal. So the veteran went and appealed the VA. And so they, long story short, they gave the veteran, the county loan limit at the time was like 747,600, which was like just 12,000 short rather than the 80,000. So the veteran was able to appeal. No other program you can do it that way. And so between you and I'd rather contend with a VA appraisal that comes in lower than any other type of appraisal that comes in lower. So that's just my thoughts on that. So let's get to the next one. They're too stringent, right? No, they have to be safe, sound, and sanitary, no different than FHA or other types of programs. And so there's two things that they can't, but here's the thing. So let me get to the next slide, right? Here's right out of the 26-7, which is the VA handbook, if you will. Request for waiver of NPR. NPR stands for minimum property requirements. So this chapter, it's been revised in its entirety, but the veteran can actually appeal the VA and get things done. So it has to be signed by the veteran. So let's say there's some minor ticky-tacky stuff, like a trip hazard and maybe an outlet broken somewhere, that the appraiser's calling for. Now, FHA, it has to be done prior to closing, period. VA, now it can be, there are some other, like 2 or 3K loan type stuff, but that has way more restrictions than anything else. You can, with FHA, you can escrow if it's weather related. But if it's not weather related, so some ticky-tacky stuff on the inside has to be done prior to closing. However, VA, the veteran can request a waiver and say, look, I'm okay with that. It's okay if those things, I'll handle that. I want the property anyway. So no other appraisal has that ability, right? If it's called out by the VA appraiser. So they're not tougher. There's 2 things they won't let waive. One is healing pain on homes built prior to 78. And the other one is a handrail. So handrail on a certain set of steps, certain amount of steps. And if you allow, as realtors, if you allow a transaction to fail over a handrail, well, come on, you got to think about that. Really? I mean, too many adults at the table to not get a handrail installed. So that's anyway. So that's the myth 3, or the VA appraisal is too stringent. So it's just not true. And then so we looked at that, and then the VA appraisal stays with the property. Again, not true. We have a saying. I belong to one of my organizations that I subscribe to. Is called the VMA, Veteran Mortgage Advisors, that I train with. And we have a saying in there: don't FHA my VA loan. Don't FHA my VA loan. VA appraisals do not stick with the property. They stick with the buyer, meaning if that same buyer tries to buy that property in the future, then they have to use that same VA appraisal. However, if another person or another veteran comes along, they get a whole new appraisal, right? So that's just kind of how it is. So let's see if there's any more on that. No, they take longer to close. No, that's myth 4. That's not. So we won't go into the whole CA class. But so let's just stop the recording there.